All right, let's jump right in. We're about to explore a theory that completely flips the classic alien story on its head. You know, what if the visitors we've been looking for out there in the stars aren't actually from the stars at all?
I mean, think about it. For decades, the assumption has always been that UFOs, if they're real, must be piloted by beings from some far-off galaxy. But a pretty radical theory suggests something else entirely. What if those strange craft are being flown by our own descendants?
And that's the absolute core of what we're digging into today. The idea that these so-called aliens are actually, get this, human time travelers from our own distant future. It's a wild thought, right? But it kind of makes you wonder why these beings are so often described as humanoid. You know, 2 arms, 2 legs, a head. Is that really just some massive cosmic coincidence? Okay, but before we get carried away, we have to ask the really big question. Is this even remotely possible? Let's take a look at what the actual laws of physics have to say about traveling through time. So, this isn't just science fiction. Thanks to a little guy named Einstein, we know that time travel into the future is theoretically possible. It's a concept called time dilation. Basically, if you could build a ship that travels close to the speed of light, time would literally slow down for you compared to everyone back on Earth. You could take what feels like a short trip, and when you return, centuries, maybe even millennia have passed. So a one-way ticket to the future? Science says, yeah, that could work. That's great for getting to the future, but for this whole theory to hold up, our descendants would need a way to come back. So how in the world could they travel backward in time? And that brings us to another wild idea, also from Einstein, wormholes. Now, these are still hypothetical, but they're essentially shortcuts through the very fabric of space-time. If they exist, and this is a big if we could figure out how to use them, they wouldn't just be for zipping across the galaxy. They might just be the ticket for traveling both forward and backward through time. So just to sum up the physics real quick, we've got 2 potential paths here. You've got near light speed travel based on time dilation, which gets you to the future. And then you've got wormholes, which are way more theoretical, but could be the key to making a round trip. The really crucial takeaway here is that as far as we know, the laws of physics don't completely rule it out. Now, let's shift gears. Let's step away from theoretical physics for a minute and look at the history books. If people have been zipping through time, shouldn't there be, I don't know, some echoes of it in the stories our ancestors told? And what do you know? The idea is everywhere. Just look at these stories from totally different cultures, separated by thousands of miles and hundreds of years. In the ancient Indian epic, the Mahabharata, a king goes up to the heavens for a visit and comes back to find centuries have passed. In Japan, there's the legend of a fisherman who visits an undersea palace for just 3 days and returns home 300 years later. Even in the Hebrew Bible, a boy passes out for what feels like a moment, only to wake up 62 years in the future. The details are different, but that core idea of massive time loss, it's shockingly consistent. Okay, so let's fast forward to our time, the modern UFO era. What happens if we look at some of the most famous encounters, but through this new lens? What if we start asking not where are they from, but when are they from? Let's start with the most famous image of an alien there is, the Greys. You know, the ones from the Roswell incident, big heads, huge eyes, small, frail bodies. Well, here's the thing. That description lines up almost perfectly with how some futurists and scientists predict humans might evolve over thousands of years. As we rely more on our brains and less on our bodies, our heads would get bigger while our physical forms might shrink. Coincidence? Maybe. But then you have a case like the Rendlesham Forest incident from 1980. This is often called Britain's Roswell, and for good reason. U.S. airmen stationed in England saw strange lights and went to investigate. They didn't just see a light in the sky. They found a physical, black, triangular craft sitting on the forest floor. Now, this is where it gets absolutely mind-bending. One of the officers, Sergeant Jim Peniston, actually touched a set of strange symbols on the side of the craft. When he did, he said he received a download directly into his mind, a flood of binary code. It took years to get it translated, but when they did, the message was, well, jaw-dropping. It said, Exploration of Humanity Continuous for Planetary Advance, Origin Year 8100. A message from the year 8100 is staggering enough, but there's more. Years after the incident, some of the key eyewitnesses talked about this unshakable feeling they had. It wasn't something they saw, but something they felt. They felt that the visitors weren't alien. They felt that it was us from the future, and that they were back to try and correct things.
Which, of course, leads us to the biggest questions of all. If these visitors really are our descendants, who are they? And why on earth would they come back here?
To even begin to answer that, we have to look at another, much quieter incident, a reported UFO crash back in 1953, this time in Kingman, Arizona. Now, according to whistleblowers who came forward decades later, the military didn't just recover a wrecked craft. The story goes they also recovered a living occupant from the crash, who was then secretly transported to Area 51. This being was described as insect-like but also humanoid, and allegedly it had a name, J-Rod. And the story he supposedly told was more shocking than any tale of alien invasion you've ever heard. Because according to the microbiologist who claimed he worked directly with him, J-Rod made one thing crystal clear. He was not an extraterrestrial. He was a human being from our own future.
And the story he told was a grim one. He claimed that at some point in our future, a massive catastrophe nearly wipes us out. One branch of humanity is forced to go underground to survive. Over countless generations in their new environment, they adapt, they evolve, they develop insectoid features. And get this story sounds an awful lot like the ancient Hopi legends of the ant people, who supposedly sheltered early humans underground during a global cataclysm. So why come back? Why travel through time to visit us? According to the story, it was all about survival. This future branch of humanity developed a severe genetic problem that left them unable to reproduce. Their journey to the past wasn't an invasion. It was a desperate mission to find a cure in the DNA of their own ancestors, in us.
So when you pull it all together, the physics, the ancient myths, the modern UFO encounters, it paints a pretty startling picture. It suggests that maybe, just maybe, our search for intelligent life has been pointed in the wrong direction this whole time. So I'll leave you with this. Are we looking to the stars for visitors who are actually coming from the calendar? It's definitely something to think about.